popping up at 9 in 5 minutes.
Okay, we can wait.
Americans wait for the last minute.
I just wanted to give you info that we are going to record this meeting, and if someone doesn't want to be recorded, please tell us, and then we are going, or you can turn off your camera, because we have intention to, if you agree, to publish that later in the Facebook profiles.
Good, perfect. But also, with the permission of Professor Jan Goldman, also we will collect articles of distinguished speaker for the latest February 15. We would like to publish the article of the guest speaker in June, I think, issue of Intelligence and Counterintelligence Journal. So Professor Goldman is there. Please, sir, correct me if I'm wrong.
Excellent idea.
Well, we'd like to do it in conjunction with the securities science journal that you have, so that it will be a joint publication.
Oh, perfect. Even better. Even better. Like a special issue related to this one things. Marco, ciao Marco.
Ciao Darko, how are you? I'm fine.
You know, in this great company, you can always be defined. So welcome to club. Marco, what's happened with your hair?
Yeah, you see, it's now 2 years I do not cut, probably. When I was back from Mogadishu, I didn't cut. So now you see, it's quite long.
Yes.
Yeah.
You look like Jesus now.
Yeah. Reality is that is, a lot of my students say, Professor, you look younger, 10 years younger. So now I'm 64. I say, perfect.
Marco, they're saying this in order to get better grades.
Good. So the good thing, good mood, and I think it's huge. And, unfortunately, we cannot add all of those in.
Darko, I think that we can wait for another few minutes, because I can see the people are still connecting with us. Also, here with us, there is a lady, one of my colleagues, Natalia Parlovuna. You can see her. She's a blonde with glasses. She's now she is a journalist of one of the most important business newspapers here in Croatia. Leader, it calls themselves Leader. And if someone wants to establish a connection and give an interview about this topic, you can send email to me, and then I will forward it to Una, so that she can establish a contact with you, and then do it and make something your interview or approachable, or just a conversation or paper, whatever you wish. Darko, there is around 70 persons here.
Excellent.
Good.
That's fine.
So I think maybe 1 more minute to wait, and then if you all agree, we shall start.
No, it's 15:01. Let's give them 5 academic minutes instead of 15, if you agree. I know that Shlomo is in a problem, because he's at this moment he lives in Germany, and in Germany is going to be locked down from tomorrow, and you know what does it go, and in this time you have to prepare for yourself for a lockdown. So Shlomo is going to leave us somewhere around 1600 hours.
Okay.
Am I right?
Yes. Germany is going to be a very heavy lockdown for tomorrow, and I basically need to empty my office at the university and take everything to the flat here. Officially, it will last until the 10th of January. I don't think I'm the only one who thinks it will be extended fairly long.
So Shlomo will speak the first, or what is now timeline order?
No, it's fine. It's fine. Just do as Gordon's plan is. That's fine. Thank you.
As we agreed, Darko, we are going to do it. But we can wait for Jan's colleagues and students that they connect themselves.
Yeah, well, we can, you know.
The first speaker is Marko, then next is Rastislav, then Jovanka Jakubek, then
No,
Zikrid.
Shlomo is going to be the third. Darko, we are going to do it step by step. Jan, would you like to be so kind to check, did your colleagues connect it?
Yeah, they're let me see. Yeah, they're usually very much on time, so they're connected. We can go anytime.
Participants, I don't know, can you see the participants list on the right side on the computers? Or it's only me who can see it?
Oh, I see. No, we got.
Just click on participants at the bottom right.
Yeah.
In the menu, click on participants and you see the list.
Yeah. All our people are here.
Okay, great. Then, Darko, if you agree, we can start if you wish.
Yes, of course.
Okay, I will unmute you all. And then I'm going to give a permission and I will remind who is going to be the person who's going to be the next speaker. Then if someone of you would like to ask something and comment something, or you can raise your hand, or you can send a message by chat inside the chat, or you can clap your hands here. There is also option here to send a shake, so that we can have some kind of connections and interconnections and visibility with the others, exchanging of opinions and knowledge. Also, Darko and I, we are going to take care who already asked to be inside this communication, so that everybody is not talking at the same time. Dear colleagues, thank you very much for gathering here. Thanks, Jan, and thank Darko for this wonderful idea. And I hope this is going to be the first time that we are going to have a meeting like this, because despite the fact that we have a corona, it doesn't mean that we have to stop thinking, stop working, stop communicating, and stop networking with each other. Let me give you just a short, brief introduction. And after that, I'm going to invite Darko to have his introduction. And then we are going to invite speakers. I would like to remind speakers also that they give us 5 to 7 minutes, not more, for their incoming words, and that they are going to give the essence of what they would like to say. And then we can open discussion, and Darko, Jan, and I, we are going to run it. I will start with, unfortunately, even the latest terrorist attacks showed us that the issue of terrorism is neither a local nor a regional problem that we have discussed here in some journalist circles here. It's really indeed that terrorism becomes a global problem. Given the pandemic crisis we are facing with, which has its significant security consequences, both direct and indirect, short and long term, given the negative impact on the physical and mental state of individuals and groups and relationships within them and within communities and societies, that imposed the need that we have been talking about and what we are advocating for some time, that security issues needs to be treated as a new multidisciplinary scientific discipline. The threats that have brought us together today, together with the reality of facing modern forms of intensive hybrid threats, promote the necessity to find comprehensive solutions for facing them outside the existing frameworks. These and future problems can no longer be dealt with only by the preventive repressive system of the states and international community. And multinational and multidisciplinary approach to the concept of the homeland security at the national and international level is necessary and important. In this sense, our academic exchange of thoughts and experiences represents one of the contributions to our joint efforts for coping with those threats. Civil society, academia, and other non-repressive institutions and organizations, including the private sector, needs to play a stronger role in preventing radicalization and thus the emergence of extremism, violence, and terrorism. Darko, I would like to invite you now to continue and to give your introductory remarks, and then we are going to invite Marco Lombardi to join us.
Thank you so much, Gordon. First of all, I would like to thank Professor Jan Goldman and also you, Gordon, to organizing all these things and all distinguished speakers and also the guests that are going to follow our conference. Obviously, the need why we gather each other today is after the terrorist attack in France and Austria, and all the time we are talking about new approach, about new models, new, and the terrorists always doing the same. And obviously, what they're doing is the same. There is no some kind of the effect of our counter-terrorism policy. So that's why we start up with a new approach. New approach is calling new approach in security science. And I would like to thank, of course, Dr. Lombardi, Dr. Nomikos, and many others present at this panel that they gathered a few years ago in Belgrade on Security International Conference, when we conclude that security is a science with its own theory grounded on, and of course, special methodology. Out of this special methodology, we can find out that also special indicators that something is very wrong on some territory affected or infected by radical Islam. So we find out 5 elements that if you study these 5 elements, you can conclude that something is very wrong on one territory. First element, I'm going to be brief. First element is the presence of terrorists and of course, their activities. Second element is the presence of terrorist organization and their activities. Third element is the presence of states or state sponsoring terrorism. And fourth element is the presence of so-called NGO supporting, harboring, and giving logistics to terrorism. And the fifth element, which we consider as one of the most important, is using, we don't know, or misusing religion as motivation for terrorist attack. So if we all know these 5 elements, we are very surprised that in long term, French authorities, Austrian authorities, they did not do anything to counter the 5 elements that they are present on their own territory. Namely, in Austria, 1989, TWRA, organized by Al-Fatih al-Hassanain, the spiritual leader of Bin Laden, they find out stronghold not in Austria, but in Vienna, capital of Austria. The whole Balkan terrorist, Balkan Wahhabi infrastructure is based in Vienna. So we are very surprised from Balkan states that Austrian authorities almost did not give anything to counter, despite the fact that we warned them for more than 10 years, 20 years, that we have meetings with the Austrian police, that finally switched TWRA, and there was a huge criminal investigation in Austria, but we don't understand why naively Austrian or French authorities believe that harboring this kind of the terrorist network will not, on the end of the day, commit attacks on their own soil. The same happened in Milano, when Marco came from. We have Islamic Center with Anwar Shaban. We know Anwar Shaban, Palestinian, who was a spiritual leader of jihadist Al-Qaeda unit in Bosnia. So he was killed by Croatian units in 1995 in Bosnia. So as you can see, we know everything, but the problem is why we don't do anything. And I'm going to stop here, and I think it's very provocative, and we shall continue with the distinguished lectures and expose of our colleagues. Thank you so much.
Well, Darko likes to be provocative a little bit, and since he ended with the Milano case, I would like to invite Marco to continue and give his presentation. Maybe he can switch on to turn on his mic. Marco, are you here?
Yes, yes, it's on.
Please, floor is yours, and please have in mind that it's going to be 5 to 7 minutes. I'm going to have my watch in front of me. Thank you.
Please keep your watch. I hope to be. I must be in time. So I skip any description of the fact. I just want to. First, we keep in mind the scenario of these 3-4 weeks. The scenario was that Europe was completely submerged by the new COVID era, forgetting terrorism, and terror came back. And the timeline is quite interesting. I start at the end of September, 25th of September, stabbing attack in Paris, if you remember, against 2 TV people in front of Charlie Hebdo. Then we have 16, decapitation of Samuel Paty. 29, the stabbing attack in Nice. The same day in Vienna, 50 Turkish teenagers shoot slogans and riots in a Catholic church, and the police assumed a connection to the caricatures of Charlie Hebdo. And November the 2nd, we had the stabbing again in Vienna. Wow, my telephone. What is interesting on that? I just pick up 3 points to the three main attacks. Samuel Paty, which are the booster of the attack. The trial against Charlie Hebdo offender, a social media campaign against the teacher. And what is important, the social media campaign has been promoted by the families of the students. The other booster, four students have been involved identifying Paty, their teacher, to the killer. And the other booster was the international climate against Macron, promoted by Erdogan. The conclusion of this first attack, Lone Wolf is a usual fake that we have to forget. The killer was at least emotionally supported by a network of sympathizers. We cannot talk about Lone Wolf. Culture of violence is already deeply rooted in our society, and the society is deeply fragmented. What happened in a school together with the pupils and the families. Social media are the booster of violence. The quick radicalization make impossible to predict these events. That is the end of the first attack. Jump to the second one, Brahim Ouissai in Nice. Brahim Ouissai arrived in Italy September 20 in Lampedusa. Then he was quarantined on an Italian ship until October 8. On October 9, the Italian police said you have to leave to go back to Tunisia. He disappeared. He showed up again on 26. On 26, move from Palermo to Rome. On 27, from Rome to Genoa. On 28, he arrived from Genoa in Nice. On 29, he attacked in Nice. That is the history on this Tunisian. I want to stress, I confirm culture of violence, quick radicalization, international climate, as the booster that already show up with Paty. But I want to add four more points. Terrorism, exploiting the route of illegal migration. Second point, lack of information sharing among the countries. This guy moved from Italy to France freely. No international cooperation among the country, and law enforcement agencies are unable to cope with new threats. This is an interesting key point, emerging again with the last step, the one in Austria, when we had the regime stabbing people in Vienna, and it took minutes to do that. And the law agency protocols didn't stop it. The LIA first paid attention to the injured people before stopping it. That does not work, let me say. There's something that we have to revisit. This guy tried to go to Kabul 2 years before. At the end, what is the result? Everything confirmed of the previous two attacks. But I want to add 2 more points. First, special group, we have in Europe a special group of people, the one who returned from IS or have been stopped on the way to the caliphate. Those people require more attention, what we didn't pay to these guys. Again, LIA protocols are not adequate for terrorist attacks. So this 2 weeks, 3 weeks in the end of October was incredible for us, because from my point of view, and to end my contribute, with the idea that we have to reshape in a new scientific and cultural approach intelligence, we have to stress first information exchange, not information sharing. We have to avoid information sharing that is based on the sharing of the mission. We have no political convergence on that. There is not political sharing. We need operational exchange. That means, for example, to develop fusion centers among different intelligence, nationally based. New skill for LEA and intelligence. We need soft skill. We need soft skill now. We need in an intelligence that must be able first to gather information browsing the communities, and intelligence, they must be able to understand the very, very, very weak signals, super weak signal, to understand what's going on. And we have, okay, I finish, and we have to bring intelligence into the international conflict. Behind France, behind Vienna, there is the exploit of terrorism by countries using terrorism as a tool in the hybrid conflict. That's for clear. For that reason, terrorism is necessary to interpret terrorism in line with its normality. Terrorism is going to be the normality in the next decade, not an exception. So we have to reshape and return the LEA activities facing these new threats, the normality of terrorism. Thanks. Darko.
Thank you, Marco. Can you hear me? Thank you so much for your wonderful presentation, as always. And I would like to remind that we have a long list of panelists, and that you shall stick 7 to 10 minutes maximum. And as I said, we're going to publish the article. Who submit article before 15th of February, we are thinking to publish in article in International Journal on Intelligence and Counterintelligence, as well in Journal of Security Science, joint project in maybe June issue, all articles. So I would like to give the floor to the next speaker, Professor Rastislav Kazanski from Slovakia. And I am very happy that we have variety of views from different European states. And this is exactly what we want, the joint response and joint efforts to counter this evil calling international terrorism. Professor Kazanski, floor is yours. Rasto? Kazanski? Do we have Kazanski? Rasto? If we shall, let's see with what's happened with Rasto. If Rasto is not available, we'll contact him. Yes,
okay.
Rasto.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
yes,
Rasto.
fine. Okay, sorry, some technical problems. Dear colleagues, dear friends, thank you for a great opportunity to meet with you by this platform today. It's a pity that we cannot meet today personally, but for the future, I hope that we see together very soon. So I have only few minutes for, let's say, some presentation, and I was looking very carefully to the very extremely important topic of today webinar, and I was thinking what could be my key topic of my presentation. As you know, I'm from Slovakia, the small state in Central Europe, and maybe the most of the population here, and also the politicians and the experts, when they are speaking about the terrorism, it's a very particular part of their work because of what? Today we had not so much, let's say, practical problems with the terrorist attacks here, thanks God for that, but we are very close to the Vienna, and now I think that the situation is going to be much more worse because the contemporary threats shows today that a lot of problems in a society becomes to be an issue and a threat for a motivation of terrorists. And this is, let's say, my remark today. What I would like to a little bit pay attention of you today to the specific aspects of the motivation and the terrorism, the relation, a correlation between these issues. My specialization is in my profile is one pillar of the security science, the theory of the conflicts. And today we should, and also the expert level should pay attention the focus to the important relevance, how we can solve the problems, the prevention of the terrorism. The first part is the prevention of the using the violence as a method of the solution of the conflicts in a society, because terrorism is a specific method with the violence, how to solve the objects of the conflict. So one part is the prevention, and one part is a conflict resolution as a second step to prevent the following terrorist threats for the future. So we should mention that today we have some different specific areas of the let's say the soil of the motivation of terrorists. Mostly, let's say, represented terrorism and very present terrorism specific is a political terrorism. Here we can see the two differences between subversional political terrorism and repressive political terrorism. Where are the differences? The key problem is the key target of this terrorist motivation is a political power. So in one part, we can see the subversional issue of the terrorism, which is something like against the which is used against the existing regime in a concrete state. This is something like an opposition attack, the violent attack against the regime. So the main target is a psychological effect, which is much more important than the direct victims of this concrete attack. So this effect is the most important target. This kind of political subversion of terrorism is something like a resolution of a very, very aggressive political struggle between or among the opposite political groups, radical left or radical right, you can imagine for example. And all of activities are focused into the specific, let's say, something like a criminalization, discreditation of the opposition leaders and parts. But I wouldn't like to speak so much about this concrete. But the repressive form is the opposite of them. This is strongly used some kind of repressive political terrorism against the opposition groups, and the key aim is to hold on the power, the political power, in the hands of the ruling parts. The next one, this next form, very important today, very present, is the terrorism with the motivation of the religion. The motivation of the terrorists on the base of the religion is mostly used as the highest or the most important motivation with the highest potential in the 21st century.
Rastislav, please think on time.
Yeah. So we can have a fundamental and eschatological terrorism. But what I would like to speak mostly about this classical fundamental terrorism, we shouldn't speak so much about that. You know it very well. This eschatological, you know very well, this something like radical forms like Om Shirin-kyo, you know, in Japan, this group-specific form of fundamental terrorism. But what I would like to put attention, maybe some kind of conclusion of my speech, when I started with the political and religional motivation of the terrorism. This is the combination of these forms. I think that this combination of the political motivated terrorism and the regionally motivated terrorism is something like what a platform of a new terrorist which are formed in the 21st century. And this dominance of these specific terrorist groups is going to be present in an active form after the September 2001 in the United States. So then we can see something like a form of monothematic terrorism, like what is presented like a single issue terrorism, because this kind of this specific group of this combination of terrorists are oriented only to the one specific form of one target, what is focused on the interest of the public sector. So this is something like extremely motivation by based on an ethnical or separatic form of this terrorist unit with the combination of the religion fundamental principles. The example is very well known as Al Qaeda was formed, or maybe the Daesh contemporary issues. So when we should speak about another force, which are still in the
can we end, Rastislav? Can we end here?
Only 1 minute. This is a monothematic terrorism, like eco-terrorists, you know, the ideologic terrorists, crime terrorists, pathological forms. So like the wolves, principle of single wolves in terrorist attacks. But what should we focus today? On a combination of the political and other forms of terrorism. This kind of platform is much so important. When we are focusing also to the Vienna, so combination with the religion and political issues. So that's very brief what I would like to speak and write more in my article. Thank you for your attention. Sorry for prolonging the time.
No, it's okay. It's only problem. Sorry for stopping you from time to time. What I would like to ask you is, I have here person with the name James Snyder, and he has his mics still turned on. Please, would you like to turn them off? Because I don't know why, but I can't do it from here. Now I would like to give the voices and the sound that you hear from time to time is that someone is switching on to this conference. Now we have 75 active participants. And now I would like to give the floor to Professor Shlomo, because he's going to leave us in half an hour. Shlomo, floor is yours, please.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, friends, for being here. Darko and Gordon for organizing this important event. We heard a lot about terrorism now, but we have to remember that we are in the midst of a pandemic, the corona or COVID-19, as we want to call it. And I would like to speak briefly about terrorism crisis management during the COVID-19 pandemic. And I will talk about limitations and opportunities. For those of you who don't know me, I'm the director of the Europa Institute in Israel. And we are dealing with Israeli security and intelligence and the security relations to Europe. What we did at the outset of the COVID crisis is we began 2 new research projects, one on biological warfare and national security, led by my colleague Dr. Eyal Pinko, and the second is on terrorism in the era of Corona, led by my colleague Dr. Barak Bux, who is also here with us today. When we talk about COVID-19 and terrorism, I decided to reveal to you a secret weapon, which is now perhaps one of the most effective counter-terrorism weapons. Please keep it just to yourselves. I will show it now. And actually, for those who can't recognize it, it's a bottle of hand sanitizer. It's probably more effective than machine guns or SIGINT or any other facilities. Make sure you have it in your pocket and use it regularly, and also as a means of countering terrorism. What do I mean by that? When we look at the recent terror attacks, what has changed in terrorism crisis management in the time of Corona? I would like to point out 3 limitations and 3 opportunities. The first limitation for terrorism crisis management in times of Corona is diminished organizational capabilities, which simply means that police forces are busy with some aspects relating to Corona. The police is busy dealing with problems in hospitals, with traffic, with problems of, it will now be a big operation, the whole vaccination issue. The police were helping other emergency services. So police capabilities against terrorism were diminished from the outset of the Corona pandemic from an organizational point of view, because the police had other tasks to deal with and had to move a lot of their personnel to deal with things directly relating to Corona. The second limitation, we don't have only diminished organizational capabilities, but we also have diminished personal capabilities. And by that, I mean that police personnel, intelligence personnel, or their families become sick or go into quarantine. This means that hundreds, at times thousands, of policemen or members of their family are not available for work because they're at home, because they're sick, because they're in quarantine, because a member of their family has been taken ill, because they just lost a parent or a grandfather, mother, or something like that. And this is an additional physical and psychological barrier to effective counterterrorism. You not only have to deal with less people, but the people you have are very busy in their minds thinking about other things. And the other limitation, the third limitation, is diminished public awareness. The public is much more concerned about wearing masks, about Corona, than about spotting signs of terrorism. Therefore, the police and intelligence services can count less on public assistance or public awareness in countering terrorism. These are the 3 main limitations that we find all over the world in counterterrorism in the time of Corona. But a pandemic is not only a disaster, it also brings with it opportunities. And I would like to mention 3 opportunities for enhancing counterterrorism at the time of Corona. The first is the international travel restrictions and the reimposition of more effective border controls all over the world, and especially in Europe, severely limit the ability of terrorists to move around. We know that terrorists could move around, especially in Europe, but also in the Middle East, very freely beforehand. There were no internal borders. They could travel not only on legitimate passports, but on all sorts of phony and fake travel documents. Today, international travel has been so restricted and border controls so much reintroduced that it means there is a severe difficulty for terrorists to move around. This restricts their ability to communicate with others. It makes them more vulnerable to SIGINT interception, because if they used to meet each other beforehand personally in a park somewhere, on a cafe, they can't do that now. They have to use phones, internet, mobile communications, which makes them much more sensitive to interception. The second opportunity is that during the Corona, many terrorist groups decreased their level of activities. They are much more concentrated on self-preservation. My colleague, Dr. Barak Books, has started a big research on how terror groups and terror organizations react to the threat and to the corona pandemic. And we generally see all over the world, with small exceptions, but it's kind of a rule that shows the exceptions, that terror groups decrease their activities and are more concentrated on self-preservation. The third opportunity during COVID is that the public is desensitized and less willing to view terrorists as Robin Hoods. There's more acceptance for police measures and less patience with terrorism. It's not a secret that various groups in the population were perceiving terrorism as some kind of Robin Hoods beforehand. The general population now, during the pandemic, have much less understanding, have much less sympathy with terrorism. And even if they had this in the past, a lot of them think, well, not now, not when we are facing this kind of threat. And therefore, there is more acceptance of police measures because there is more acceptance of police and general emergency measures for the pandemic itself. The recent attacks show the effect of these limitations. The terrorists operate in smaller cells now with a very small support group, and the results are less well-planned attacks. We know from studying many case studies that terrorists plan one methodology, one plan of attack. And if this is disrupted during the attack, they become panicked and less effective. So what lessons do we take from here? We need to shift from concentration only on prevention to concentration also on reaction. So far, the role was that intelligence is mainly concerned in the prevention of terrorism and police is concerned in the reaction. We need to bring both of them together. So far, we had a concentration on static security, cameras, guards, barriers, physical security, and so on and so forth. We need to move both police and intelligence services towards mobile reaction. We need to learn the lessons from counterinsurgency and move to mobile reaction, not only of the police, but also of intelligence services. And we should remember, intelligence services sometimes move like turtles. Turtles move in a very certain direction, but very slowly. We need to change that. There are problems at the scene of the attack. There's confusion. There are unclear identities. We've seen that in several attacks. Terrorists wearing police uniforms. There is unknown terrain. All of these must be incorporated into what I see is becoming more and more a key to counter terrorism, also within intelligence, not just the police, and that is realistic training and simulation. We need to develop more realistic training and simulation for the police and for the intelligence services and for crisis communication that will be based on real case studies, and they will help the reaction in times of minutes or seconds needed for that. There is an old saying, when the police are only minutes away, your protection might be measured in seconds. We need to shorten the time of reaction of police and intelligence service, make it more effective, and therefore concentrate on reaction and not just prevention. Thank you.
Thank you, Shlomo. You're always inspirative. It is my great honor and privilege to announce our next speaker, a distinguished professor Siegfried Beer from the Austrian Center for Intelligence, Propaganda and Security Studies. Professor Siegfried, he was the former director of this center, and now we would like to give the floor to you, sir.
Thank you very much, and I'm really happy to be part of this interesting meeting here on video. While Shlomo gave us a macrocosmic view, as only he can, I will concentrate on the microcosm of little Austria, because after all, this is supposed to be about Austria as well. Now, as you know, we used to be a grand country with lots of power in Europe, at least, and that still has an importance because, as was said before, Austria was always a meeting place of various groups and people who had plans that were certainly violent or even terroristic. And this is true going back all the way to the Habsburg monarchy and also to the interwar years. And while in Austria we think in terms only of what happened after World War II, this must also be kept in mind. And indeed, it is true that the attack on November 2nd was connected to Corona. We now know that this guy, KF, as we call him, panicked. And I don't want to go into details, but he was a lone wolf in most ways, maybe in all ways. But he did not plan to attack on that particular evening. It was the evening before a soft lockdown. And of course, he had to count on the fact that for the next 2 weeks or more, there won't be people out on the streets. So that connection, I think, is important. But for me as Austrian intelligence scientist, it's much more important to look at what happened actually with our so-called security service, called BVD, as I'm sure you all know. Because we from the Center of Austrian Intelligence, Propaganda and Security Studies in our journal, we talked for years about problems that seem to exist in this once considered the island of the blessed. And indeed, for 40 years or so, 45 actually, there wasn't really a terrorist attack on Austrian soil. We thought that this was going to continue. Well, we told those that listened to us that there's going to be a crash in Austria as well. And of course, on November 2nd, it happened. And were we prepared? Well, not to go into details, for matters of luck, there were all kinds of forces out on the street. Because for November 3rd, there was going to be what we call a razzia, an attack on the Muslim Brotherhood and other organizations. That was on the next day. So this helped to react very quickly to the attacker. And actually, I have a friend who saw the attacker and called me within seconds of having heard these shots. So it comes home very closely, even to an intelligence scientist living in Graz. But what is important is that this particular incident proves that in Austria we are not having the quality we need in terms of our 3 intelligence services. Now, the military services, we have 2 of those, apparently were not involved in any of this, which is unbelievable for me also. So the concentration was on BVT, our security service. And there were elements in this attack, or there are elements in this case of KF that clearly show that the capacity of this security service is not up to par for several reasons. And the one that I always hammer on, without actually getting any kind of response from the ministries involved, is the quality of the people that work there, the quality of the staff, and of course also the size of the budget. Because if you have a small service like that, and you have to observe perhaps up to 250, 300 people who are potential terrorist candidates, that particular service is not capable of doing it. And this particular attacker was actually more or less under control. He was sentenced to, I think, 18 months in prison. He served quite a bit of that time. And he, of course, needed to be treated as a former supporter of IS. And he was. Every 2 weeks, somebody met him and talked with him. And then the BVT found out that actually he did go to Slovakia and tried to find a weapons store to buy weapons and ammunition. And he was BVD was alerted by the German intelligence service and perhaps even by the Swiss. In other words, there was every chance to know that this guy was up to something and was not yet freed of his terroristic leanings, and yet it took place. So for me, as a retired intelligence scientist, what is important and what is proven is that those of us who deal with intelligence issues as historians or even as political scientists and look at the larger picture in the world and look at the global developments and compare intelligence services and their problems and their advantages, we in Austria have not become partners in dialogue with those people in charge and responsible for security in this country. And it is very difficult to get that dialogue started if on the other side you have people who are afraid of you, apparently, or think that they know it all. It's a problem that maybe Austria has and other countries don't have. If you don't have it, you are lucky. I've been working on that for 15 years and more and have not made any intent into that situation. And this is, I think, the one thing that we need to learn. We need better people at the security service. We need to recruit these people at the universities. They need to be knowledgeable, not just about Austria, but about the world. Thank you, Akka. You gave me a sign, right?
Yes, I did. Thank you. Thank you, Siegfried, for the detailed insight into some of the things that I didn't know before. But what you mentioned is education and knowledge and experience is a conditio sine qua non of any efficient fight against any kind of the problems, not just the terrorism. And putting the accent only on the youngsters, it might be a problem because if you don't know the context, then it means that you need quite a lot of information to understand what is really going on, and that means the prevention is going to be endangered. I would like to just remind you, we have a chat down there on the right side of the screen. You can see the chat signal, and if somebody would like to ask the question, please write it there, use this possibility, and Darko and I, we are going to notice. Now I would like to give the floor to Dr. Jovanka Jakub-Lalik so that she can have her 7 minutes. Jovanka, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the invitation and for the possibility to speak with such an interesting panel of experts. And I'm very privileged to be here today. Well, I would like to speak about actually how the cities respond to the terror threat. So I would also like to address the concept of urban resilience, because I believe that the city level is actually extremely important in preventing terrorism and also in fighting terrorism. So I would like to address that. Why do I think that city level is so important? Basically, first of all, cities have a more and more increasingly important role in the 21st century. More and more people live in the cities, and also they act as centers for political, economic, and cultural power. Also, in the cities, we have more diverse communities. There need to be also accommodated differences and disagreements within society. We also have ethnically and religiously mixed neighborhoods and, of course, open spaces, mass gatherings, which are difficult to protect in many instances. So cities that they are the increasingly important actor, and also, of course, the states are responsible for the security issues, but I think that cities are increasingly important as well. So coming to the concept of urban resilience, I'm not going to go deeply into academic details of the concept, but I would like just to stress that it is very, very important for the cities to be able to recover after this kind of shocking events, and also to prevent and to prepare themselves to some sudden or unexpected events. So we also need to accommodate this kind of threats. So basically, when we speak about urban resilience, we are speaking about three major components. Yes, first component is, of course, the climate change. The second is natural disasters, and this is what the cities need to be prepared for. But the third extremely important component is terrorism and terrorism prevention. And this is what I would like to address today. Basically, when we speak about the terror prevention, we also need to think about three main important kind of issues. Yes, first of all, there is an issue of urban planning. So when we think about terror prevention, of course, we need to upgrade security. Sometimes we need to install some physical protections like barriers, like concrete blocks or things like that, especially if we think about some terror attacks which were made by driving into pathways or also kind of striking people on the streets. So there should be some more advanced physical protection, and urban planning needs to take that kind of threats into account. Also, we probably need to use more additional kind of CCTV cameras and equipment, of course. When it comes to artificial intelligence, when it comes to modern technologies, there is an enormous amount of things that could be used in terms of preventing terrorism and terrorist threats, like, for example, use of drones, which can be now equipped with intelligence. They can be capable of, for example, spotting heat and motion. Also, they can gather some video and data analytics to spot anomalies in bigger crowds. So, of course, that could be also used in terms of urban planning and also urban management. Well, we can also speak about some restrictions to accessing some kind of public events when it comes to especially people who are who might be perceived as being of danger. But when it comes to urban planning, we also need to speak about balancing, because when we only focus at the threat of terrorism and on security issues, we might sometimes forget or lose sight of the civil liberties, and we need to balance that for sure, because these are kind of two extremely important notions that we need to have in mind. What else needs to be done when it comes to building urban resilience against terrorism? I think that extremely important aspect is the social prevention. So basically, actually, the level of city has access to some kind of tools that might be more difficult to access on the level of a state. For example, training key actors at local level to recognize signs of violent extremism. So we need to cooperate and also coordinate the actions of social services, of medical professionals, of education, of schools, also to catch this kind of early signs or early identification of people who are susceptible of to recruitment, for example, by some terrorist organizations, or they are susceptible to some violent behavior. So that is extremely important to as early as possible kind of catch that and see that, recognize that. But also, you know, limiting access to weapons or some kind of tools that could be used potentially as weapons is also quite important. The third very important factor when it comes to the level of urban management is the coordination and cooperation. So the level of a city is very, very important when it comes to coordinating between the for example, police forces, the security forces on a state level, on a local level, but also some international organizations, which are also quite important when it comes to handling security. So this kind of issues are also very important to be addressed. So basically, to kind of sum up what I have said, when it comes to the concept of resilient city and resilience city in terms of terrorism, the city needs to assess, to plan, and to act, also to be prepared for and to quickly respond to all hazards. Yes, either they are sudden or slow onset, either they are expected or unexpected, but basically preparation is extremely important. The solutions need to be proactive rather than reactive. Yes, so we need to plan ahead, we need to think ahead, especially when it comes to this kind of black swan events. Yes, so the events which are low probability, which have low probability of happening, but also high impact, because basically what happens after this kind of terror attacks, we know that the aim is actually to stop the interactions within society. Also, people tend to be self-segregated and then more susceptible to exploitation, radicalization, and extremism. So we need to prevent that. We need to act proactively. We need to take also proportional measures. So this issue that I have addressed several minutes ago about civil liberties, and also having that in mind, that we need to think about the impact on freedoms, the freedom of movement, for example, also livability of the city, because sometimes even the security aesthetics play a role when it comes to urban planning and urban management. And also there need to be balance between reducing risk and also managing the unexpected outcomes, but we need also to be mindful when it comes to other policy goals and also improving livability of the city. So thank you very much. I believe that my time has run out, so I would also like to give the floor, and I'll be happy to engage in conversation and respond to questions after that. Thank you.
Thank you, Jovanka. Thank you so much. It was always great as always. And I would like to give floor now to our distinguished colleague, Professor Zoran Dragicic, Vice Dean of the Faculty of Security Studies and member of the Serbian Parliament. So, Professor Dragicic, floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Darko. Thank you very much for all. It is a great honor for me to be together with you. I'm listening your presentation very carefully, and I'm again convinced that terrorism is very complex issue, as a very complex phenomenon, and we try to find, as a scientist, as a people who are some of us was or now is a members of parliament, member of security forces, and we have to fight against terrorism day by day. But from the science point of view, we have to define some theoretical paradigm to fight against terrorism, to define what terrorism really is. And I'm sure that is just a few phenomenon in the world as a terrorism. There is no one definition which is accepted by the whole international community or international scientist community, but everybody knows what is a terrorism. We have a definition of terrorism in our legal system, in our law, but in fact it is very fluid. When we try to, when we think we know now what is the terrorism, this phenomenon change his face, change modus operandi, change organizational form, and we think that we have a feeling that we are again on the beginning to accept, to understand which with kind of evil we have a problem. Professor Slomos mentioned, and he speaks about terrorism in the corona pandemia. We have now pandemia of corona as the biggest issue in the security, in the politics, in the health system. Everybody just thinks about immunization, about vaccine, and we a little bit forgot terrorism as the main security issue on the world. Next time something else will cover terrorism, but terrorism will be always present in our lives. And I think when we try to define one theoretical approach, it is always, as you know, in social science, is always very hard to find one theoretical approach which be efficient in every possible situation. But in my opinion, we have to think on the two levels. One level is terrorism as an act of violence, to try to find some modus operandi which different terrorist organizations use in their violent activities. Violence, I'm sorry to say this, violence is something in human nature. We cannot fight against violence. This is so big and so ambitious goal for us. We have to think about concrete violence, terroristic violence, which we faced in present days in our life. Second level, which we have to think about terrorism, is the root of terrorism. Now we are talking about religious terrorism, we are talking about state-sponsored terrorism, ideological terrorism. Maybe we can defeat, I don't know, religious terrorism in the near future or within next 10, 20 years. But other kinds, terrorism is the just form of violence. Terrorism is not ideology. Terrorism is just one form of violence, as a war, as a criminal, as the other things. We have to, I really don't say we should. We have, as a scientist, as a security scientist, to find real roots of this kind of violence. And we have to prevent on this level. Now, we have a problem with the religious terrorism. We have to think about de-radicalization, about, and we don't just think about means. We have to think about actors. Who has enough tools, who has enough power to implement these tools in fighting terrorism. For example, without this Islamic terrorism, we cannot fight without Islamic terrorism without Islamic communities. We need imams. We need people in Islamic community who has a job to educate young Muslims. Me, as a professor of security studies and a Christian, I cannot educate young Muslims. This is a job of imams. This is a job of teacher of Islam. And we have to make some kind of connections with them. When we're talking about ideological terrorism, now we forget this kind of terrorism. Maybe because this terrorism belongs to the past, belongs to the Cold War, when two blocs, Soviet Union, United States, fight each other on ideological level. But today, economical crisis, especially economical crisis which are consequence of coronavirus, of corona pandemia, can cause some kind of this terrorism, because a lot of people lost their jobs. A lot of people are unsatisfied with health care. Maybe many of people around the world are humiliated by the health treatment and how them and their families pass through coronavirus. This is a big field for so-called left radicals, and they can use this situation to rise up their ideology and to make problem. Our job is to find some efficient tools how to fight against it. State-sponsored terrorism. We know very well that beyond many terrorist organizations in the past, unfortunately, and today. This is a part, especially bearing in mind hybrid warfare. Many countries can use terrorist organization as a very cheap and very effective weapon and very effective tool to promote and to achieve their political goals and their geopolitical goals. And we have to think about these possibilities and how to discover what's happened. Our job is not just to describe. We are very skillful to describe terrorist attack, terrorist organization, but between describe some phenomenon and to explain this phenomenon is a big gap. Our job, and I will stop here because I think I spent my time. Our job is to make a bridge between explanation and describing. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Zoran. As a matter of fact, you partially answered one of the questions that we received. Now I would like to invite Vasko Stamerski from North Macedonia to join us and to give you his presentation in the next 5 to 7 minutes. Vasko, the floor is yours. Unmute yourself, Vasko. Vasko.
Yes. I'm good now?
Okay, now it's okay.
Okay, what can you say in 5 minutes? First of all, I would like to great organizer this event and all participants. In this topic, in my topic, the processing of intelligent information in relation to terrorist attack in France and Austria, theoretical and practical approach. I will try to give a brief overview and to set a few theses and open some questions and dilemmas related to the terrorist attack in France and Austria in the context of intelligence data processing. Intelligent data processing is of great importance for detecting and preventing any form of crime, especially the criminal acts of terrorism. Too often, when certain information are discarded, which at first do not seem important or serious, can lead to huge consequences. This means that analysts and operatives should take every piece of data seriously and with care. Looking at the facts, which can be seen through various statements and videos of the terrorist attack in Nizza and Vienna, we can say that both attacks have elements of terrorism motivated by radical Islam. The difference between them is the methodology of the execution of the terrorist act, the level of organization, the means used for execution, the number of participants. A common element is the choice of victims. They are victims who were randomly found at the place where the terrorist attack took place, or so-called accidental victims. I will address several criminalistic aspects regarding to the terrorist attack in Vienna and the circumstances that result from it. The information that can be found in the media and on other sources disclose that the Austrian service had certain information related to the one of the terrorist attack, who is the direct executor of the attack. What is interesting from the criminal point of view is the fact that he has previous manifested behavior that indicated his potential for possible radical action. Knowledge this as well as the information about his attempt to buy weapons and ammunition, which were received by the services in Slovakia. The security services of Austria were obligated to do an additional investigation and to apply the method of crime forecast or of criminal behavior. This imposed several theses and questions related to the terrorist, among which weren't the previous information about his activity as a radical enough to be put under operational control together with other like-minded people? Where did he become radicalized? And what was the possible motive for his radicalization? Religious, financial, and some other motive. Is this enough information about his possible further activity? The question of his release and de-radicalization in such a short time, what influenced him to de-radicalize? Did this needed further operational processing and control. Where did he get this knowledge of weapons and field training? From the recordings that come out in the media, it can be seen that he moves and acts with the weapons as if he had some previous training. Maybe the analysis and operational check of his trip to Macedonia during the summer period can give us some additional information. The media also wrote about other possible accomplices from Macedonia, Kosovo, and other Balkans countries. Is this perhaps information that the security services should consider for further intelligence activity outside Austria? And another question and thesis. In the end of this short presentation, we can conclude that the theoretical knowledge and its finding is always limited in its hypotheses, claims, conclusions, and principles. From another side, the practice and experience gained after each terrorist attack opens new perspectives and modalities in the fight against terrorism and gives direction on how and in what way they can be applied through the existing theoretical knowledge. Internet platforms for radicalization and propaganda are just one of the methods used by radical Islamic organizations that were not known to criminal theory until recently. Cooperation is finding common mechanism to preventing radical Islam as a new modern form of terrorist threat also is very, very important. The people that work in the sector of intelligence data processing in the fight against terrorism and his threat can learn from everyday development of new phenomenology of terrorist act, as well as different approaches of their executors. The analysis and investigations concluded daily will improve the existing and find new methods and means in the fight against terrorism with a focus on radical religious terrorism. It's a fact that Islamic fundamentalism exists in the territory of Europe, most often manifested and led by religious motives through Wahhabism, Salafism, etc. There is large number of religious buildings where some Muslims are radicalized and they are sent to fight in Middle East, which is case with young terrorists from Vienna. It should represent one more reason to take action globally through bilateral and international cooperation. This is where the question arises. How much do the security service and sectors within the countries cooperate or exchange data with each other, or how much do they trust receiving data? It's another fact that the Slovak security services has given the Austrian security service relevant and important information about the terrorist and his intention to buy weapons and ammunition, and yet the security services in Austria somehow didn't use this information accordingly, which might have prevented the terrorist attack in Vienna. Perhaps the security services didn't give enough criminal weight to the information, or they neglected them in that point, which can be taken as an omission in the processing and analysis of the available information. This is my short presentation. Thank you for your attention. I hope that I will publish the entire content of my article as soon as possible. And also I wish you good health. Thank you. I think 7 minutes.
Thank you so much. It's my great pleasure and honor now to announce the next distinguished speaker, Professor John Nomikos. And I want to apologize to John Nomikos. It was a mistake between me and Gordon on the timeline of the speech. And Professor Nomikos, floor is yours, sir.
Thank you very much. I'm very happy to see so many familiar faces, in this webinar today. Well, I will take another perspective in the 7 minutes that I have in my time. First of all, we have to realize, when it happened, the first serious incident in Europe. You remember? 11 March 2004. And in this last month, November, we have another incident in Vienna, in Austria. From 2004 until 2020, we have almost 60 years, And what we learn in these 16 years? I heard very carefully all the speakers about the lack of intelligence sharing, right? Yes, but did we make any really development to some extent about increasing the international collaboration, among Europe, among the United States, with Israel and every other, partner? 2 weeks ago, I was, participating in the Global Counterterrorism Council in New Delhi, in India. And the scholars in India and the Southeastern Asia scholars, they discuss exactly the same things about, intelligence sharing, how practical and how operational are intelligence sharing, to go ahead and to exchange, time on real time. Sometimes we can discuss about lack of intelligence sharing, but we realize is that most sharing that comes, through the intelligence sharing is on the bilateral level. And now I come to the critical issue that I like to share with you. From March 11, 2004 until today, what we see in the European Union, because we discuss about terrorism in Europe, right? What we see that the European Union, they have established the so-called the European Union Intelligence Analysis Center, all right? It's working there, and then we have to ask again ourselves, is that operational? Is that open sources intelligence sharing? Is that liaison officers? Is what? And other things, we have the so-called the European Intelligence College. That was initiative by President Macron. All right, more or less is like an academic forum, discuss, with each other. And recently, like a few days ago, yes.
John, wait a second, please. I'm going to again unmute all because there is a strong interference by someone. The microphone is turned on. I'm going to mute all, and then please turn on only you turn on your mic.
Okay. Go ahead. Yes. Okay. So President Macron discussed, the so-called the European Intelligence College. This is like more or less like an academic forum, and a few days ago, as I said, the IFE USA and IFE Europe organized a very well, and a productive conference. And then what we see another, initiative in the EU Military Committee was that the joint European Union intelligence that took place like 2 years ago, and Greece and Cyprus are in charge to come up with a joint EU intelligence. Did we see any development until now? No. We have to see what's going on. And then we go, we have in Brussels another institution, the so-called European Intelligence Defense College. All right. So what we see here in 2002, in 16 years, we see 4 to 5 institutions in the European Commission. We see initiative, all right, and this is good. I mean, this is a positive issue. Since 2004, at least the European Union is moving and creating forums and some institutions, and almost we have seen also, the EU, coordinator for counterterrorism. What we don't see is how all these organizations are going to collaborate. So everyone correctly stated that sometimes, no matter how many, institutions, create in Europe, like in the United States, the critical issues is to have all these institutions, collaborate, and to have a so-called a European intelligence culture. We miss, to have the culture and intelligence security studies. In the Mediterranean and the Balkan, we collaborate only with the people we trust, only with the country we trust. The same happened in Scandinavia. The same happened in the Benelux. The same happened in the Central Europe. So this is not going to work. This cannot work. We need to, to collaborate on the European level, and at least in these 16 years, we need to learn something, that the terrorism cannot be beaten by unilaterally. Terrorism can be beaten only if we have intelligence sharing in real time among USA, among Europe, among Israel, among India, everybody else need to collaborate, because whatever happened to us, it happens to the USA and Canada, it happens in India and so on. So I want, to add, my short analysis here, and to offer, the floor to the next speaker. Thank you.
Thank you, John. It was nice. It was like always interesting when you are speaking. I would like just to remind you, since I was quite a long time spending in the intelligence, there is a forum, not one, where intelligence agencies exchange their knowledge and informations. And what Siegfried mentioned, it's not just sharing information, it's a knowledge about the person who are receiving those informations and the trust and their education, that they can recognize, yes, this is valuable, this is not valuable. We are going to use it or we are not going to use it. Sometimes this is, I think, one of the results of the analysis done by the US intelligence community after the 9/11 attack. Now I would like to give the floor to Dr. Florent Lobont from Romania. Please, floor is yours.
Oh, hello everyone. First of all, thank you so much for inviting me. It's an honor to continue collaboration with Darko and your very active institute. I'm not going to take a lot of your time. You can just say that I'm grateful to Professor Zoran Drakshic and Dr. Stamesky because they mentioned something in relation, or they mentioned the buzzword called de-radicalization, which somehow is placed at the other end of the process, but it has to be integrated in the whole picture. I'm the executive director of the Romanian Center for Prison Studies, or Penitentiary Studies, to be more correct. And I tried over the last 5-6 years to bring people on the same page from different countries. It's something which we just heard here from Dr. Nomikos, that is not really happening very well. So at the level of European projects, European funded, EU funded projects, we try to bring together academics and professionals, hand-on professionals, as partners in like multi-country projects, like 7, 8, 9, 10 countries, trying at least at this level, which is not an official, is not a state involved, is not like a full committed at the state level engagement in common policies and common approaches to diminish a little bit this problem, which seems that is lingering despite of the increasing number of bodies and organizations created. Some of them almost they look like they are being taken out of a hat just overnight, and they don't really seem to be effective. So try to bring people together and work at least at a much lower level. And so because of that, the success is limited, of course. One of our last endeavors was to actually try and research what's going on in the field of best practices, or in the field of de-radicalization. After we looked also at the largest picture, which is radicalization and so on, and assessment, developing assessment tools, and trying to integrate them, and developing assessment tools in the prison systems, because we are kind of narrowing our approach to the corrections let's say field, because we consider that the corrections and the prisons are a breeding ground for terrorism. And also we see that people who have been through prisons have not been really de-radicalized there, and it's the case of Mr. KF in Austria. So there is still so much to do in order to actually conduct, on the one hand, effective DRAD programs, and on the other hand, to interactively share between countries these programs. So the findings we came to point at the following things: that there continue to be very fuzzy lines between conceptualization and operationalization in practice regarding all these concepts we use and people use. While the conceptual level, at the academic level, researchers level, we see a very rich and nuanced landscape of concepts. The operational side, where people actually, where you have professionals who work in the field, that side, the translation of theoretical concepts into practical work is much reduced because of the problems with measuring certain non-overlapping concepts. So there's confusion about what each concept means. People are not really aware of what that is, what concepts are actually covering in terms of meaning. And that is why, this is another reason why security should become, and is actually a science, or should become more visible as a science, the need for clarification and operationalization of tools. In practice, there is a need for stronger interdisciplinary communication and coordination, as well as a renewed critical and rigorous re-evaluation of the conceptual field and its translation into practical work to maximize coherence and impact measurement. Social and psychological factors are key in the literature and in practical programs design work. However, the need for a better understanding in order to be able to, there is a need for a better understanding in order to be able to improve existing programs, as well as the entire decision-making process related to de-radicalization and disengagement from before someone enters a prison to after the leave, after he or she leaves the prison, and a reintegration program. The little coordinated actions across the European Union and its partners to measure and understand social and psychological factors and mechanisms to work in certain communities needs to be strengthened and systematized in order to provide more reliable evidence of what works and what does not work. Finally, important efforts are being made across the board with respect to the design, implementation, and evaluation of de-radicalization and disengagement programs. Their success is, however, still part of the big puzzle for the reasons I sketched just a minute ago, and one of the most stringent call to action for the research and professional community. We need better instruments to measure impact and better operationalization of useful concepts to be able to harness impact at the individual, institutional, and societal levels. This effort includes continuing multidisciplinary staff training, training of justice system professionals, as well as educational training and coaching of inmates and their families. We also need a comparative understanding of success cases. Despite differences in national and even regional level disparities, strategies and implementation models, socio-psychological factors, and mechanisms are a few common elements of successful disengagement and de-radicalization that need a more systematic evaluation and implementation. Well, I'll stop here because time is up, and I would like to thank everyone for being here and sharing their experience. Thank you.
Thank you, Florin, so much for your great presentation. And without any further ado, I would like to announce the next our distinguished speaker, Professor Alberto Testa. So, Professor Testa, floor is yours. Professor Testa, Alberto, do we have you on?
Yes, I always have a lot of problem with these videos. Well, I'm trying to attempt to share my PowerPoint, but I'm sure already that it will not be easy. So let me see. No, but okay. Well,
Alberto, at the bottom of the screen, when
Yes.
you put your mouse down there, so you can see this icon in the middle, share,
Yeah.
and then you have received the privileges to share the content, and then you have to choose which screen of your open screens you have on your computer that you would like to share with us.
Okay.
Otherwise, send it to my email, and I will open it for you.
Okay, well, I mean, I can send it by email, but I don't want to waste the time. So what I will do is, I have believe me, I have a PowerPoint presentation I will send you later, so that we don't waste time. So I call it researching extremism the right way, because I believe that to understand terrorism and so extremists behind that, we need also to have a data which are grounded in reality. And one of the most important places to gain this data is internet, for the ease of access, lack of regulation, and also a large flow of information. And this is make us a much easier way of doing this type of research. Why internet? Because in internet, not only on internet, also on face-to-face, but in internet, we have the classical, well-known term of radicalization. Well, radicalization, for what I believe about radicalization, is basically a process of change, or how a person actually change and transform its political ideas. But many radicalization, many attention on social media and journalists and so on are focusing on what I call it external radicalization, which is very easy to find on internet because target new individuals and try to adopting their ideas. But what I'm interested more is in what I call inward radicalization. So when individuals that they have already been brought to the cause, well, they actually are recruited and also are changed for contemplation to action, from activism to political soldier. And these occur in internet by occult means. So it doesn't occur in telegrams, it doesn't occur on Facebook and so on, but occurs with occult blogs and closed forums that actually recruit individuals and make them to do this shift. And so that is what I think we need to focus on to understand more about the rationale behind these individuals. And one of strategy that I use to go into and to look for this data, I try to adopt the same intelligence cycle that many intelligence analysts use, but I have shaped it to my needs. So basically, the first, what I say here, there should have been a slide with intelligence cycle, by the way. So the first one, what I call it, is a preparation. The preparation is very important because help to identify, prioritizing, and validating data requirement. It translates this requirement into observables. But the most important thing, because these occult plays in internet are heavily vetted, you need to start to learn jargon. You need to start to learn the main symbols used in this environment, which many are not so evident like we think. They don't use, for instance, far-right swastikas anymore. And also we need to select the gates on which way we will gain this data. And of course, we need to be meticulously into adopting an undercover persona, creating a soft puppets persona, which is very difficult to do. Well, once that we have done this one, then we go into the collection phase. And internet, I understand the internet as basically as a toolbox of strategies. It is very important because they are occult blocks and they are not very easily accessible. We need to understand the jargon very well. And by jargon, we can actually bypass the control of the search engine because they tend to put this dodgy site, low ranking in the searching So we can use quotation mark to use a specific jargon to try to look for then websites, and from website, if we are lucky, to try to gain some link to social media, and then on that case perhaps to start to chat on Telegrams and to try to find out these forums. Now these forums, occult forum, occult blogs, they are actually held by people that they have a very skill in PC programming, so they are very secure and there is a very strong vetting. So once, if we are lucky to enter in this forum, then in that case, we needed to start to select appropriate sections and threads. Generally, I use, I use a lot of materials so that if I don't need it, I will discard it. And I also use a posting within a certain time period to see the evolution of perceptions of these individuals under a specific occurrence. For instance, I have monitored the post-Tarrant episode, and it's very, very interesting of the evolution of how these people make sense of the Christchurch massacre. Once that we have done that one, then we go to the analysis phase. The analysis phase is basically try to convert into format all what we have gathered. So translation is synthesis of messages, personal messages, video production, photographic processing, but also most importantly, analysis of symbols. And by this information, building up a network analysis using, I use a specific software. I'm also a trainer of that, which is called Maltigo, which is quite good in doing so, and also qualitative data analysis by MaxQDA. Once I've done that one, generally what I use a different method to analyze it. We can use it qualitative reducing methods. So the general idea is to capture central themes, a content within a corpus of context or text, or to compare different text corpus with regard to their theme. So basically what we want to do here, we want to reduce the complexity of the analysis of the material. And one of the key methodological questions when we are doing so is to define the unit of analysis. Generally, my unit of analysis are the single posting, which will fit different content categories when I will do the analysis. Well, another type of analysis that can be done is a qualitative magnifying methods. In this case, what we do it is we go for the context of the forum. Remember, this is an occult forum, not everyone can access them. So we do introductory pages of the forum, forum rules, different way. The psychological side is very important, the style of communication about certain topics, the effect of styles that the participant and on specific responses, and the use of metaphor. Sometimes it's very important with the use of metaphor to understand also the phase of radicalization of these individuals when they enter into the forum and post for the first time. And then we have also quantitative analysis, which we can use it actually multidimensional scaling, clustering, and correspondence analysis when we want to compare different groups with different specific forums. Then there is the dissemination. I don't want to, well, I mean, we already know about the dissemination. What I wanted to do, and last, is the ethics of all this work. Because it's unfortunately, and this is what we do, I am an applied criminologist. So basically, I ground my analysis on reality. To do this work, you need to go uncovered. So there are some ethical dilemma here. My justification is a consequentialist type of ethical approach. So basically what I think is covert research is acceptable if the social benefit outweighs the cost of the participant. And because we are speaking about extremists, and in one of my analyses, for instance, I pick it up the trash of a mosque in Scotland, and I inform immediately the counter-terrorist unit to foil that kind of thing. I think we are justified on using this technique, and and these techniques are quite important to also to prevent further episodes. So that's it. That is my intervention.
Thank you so much, Alberto. If I don't know whether we have now Professor Dimitar Dimitrov. We have some technical problems. Gordon and I try to solve this problem, but before we try to solve the problem with our Bulgarian professor, I would like to say thanks to all distinguished lecturers. And I would like to say that now on this webinar, we have, as you can see, we start with 70, 80, now we have 66 participants all around the world, including distinguished professor Pramon Jashwal from Kathmandu, from roof of the world. So we have a professor from China, from United States, all around the Europe, etc. So as we can see, not only terrorists, also we are able to cooperate between us, and I see the great synergy, I see the great energy among us, and we shall keep on that way. So I would like to ask Gordon whether we established the contact with Professor Dimitrov.
I cannot see him yet, but please send him a message that he received the invitation again so that he can check his emails, and then he's going to join us. But I would like to use this opportunity to raise a few questions that we have received. First question is, I would like to ask Dr. Baer. Siegfried, are you with us still? Siegfried?
Yes, I am.
Okay, please. There is one question here. The question is, what do you think are the key reasons why the Austrian security system failed to prevent the terrorist attack in Vienna, despite the information it would have obtained from partner security services?
I think it's pretty clear that the person in charge of observing KF was overburdened and somehow could not get the attention of some of his superiors. A clear failure to keep an eye on somebody like that. And of course, in Austria, for the BVT to do that, they need to have a permission of a special legal advisor called Rechtsschutzbeauftragter. And of course, that's a procedure that is not very popular, I imagine, among intelligences. But in any case, this was neglected. This was overlooked, despite several incidents of putting attention on this attacker. And so, in my opinion, it's a very clear failure on their part. Of course, the Minister for the Interior tried to hand it on to the Ministry of Justice by saying that they sort of should have taken care better of this guy in his de-radicalization process. But I don't agree with that. I think it's clearly placed on the BVD.
Thank you. But I will return also to you again, because the next question is also I can connect it with you, and I would like also to Dr. Lombardi and Dr. Kazansky to comment it, and then I will ask my very dear friend Ivan de Mesmaeker, who is the Secretary General of European Corporate Security Association from Brussels, to answer also that question. The question is, have democratic governments gone overboard in establishing security and intelligence review regimes that focus on propriety and legality to protect citizen privacy, thereby hampering counter-terrorism action? With other words, I think, what is the level of privacy that we are ready to protect in fighting the counter-terrorism? Siegfried, first you, if you can, please.
You want me to answer?
Yes, please.
Yeah. In the case of Austria, we have had a sharpening, as it were, of the law the security law, the state security law 3 or 4 years ago. And in my opinion, and that it gave our services broader rights to act and interfere. In my opinion, that law would have been sufficient. But of course, as it happens in most countries, when something happens, something big happens, all of a sudden, the lawmakers in the government get together and create something new and something stronger, something more dramatic. In this case, I'm not sure that that's necessary. Certainly, it shouldn't be a quick shot kind of thing, because what the possibilities the BVT had, I think, would have been enough to prevent this particular case had they acted on it. Maybe not forever, but for on that Monday evening.
Mm-hmm. Thanks. Also, the same question for Marco Lombardi and Rastislav Kazanski. Marco.
Yes. Okay. Here I am. Switch on. I think that the level of privacy, at least in Italy, is going to be reduced. But this is not the effect of terrorism. It is not necessary to fight terrorism. That's the result of the general regime using the pandemic as the real threat. And because pandemic, people are not aware that their privacy is more control. I mean, they are going to lose in terms of privacy. They are completely not aware of that. It is more a political issue than an issue regarding our agency, let me say. And it is the way the pandemic has been used by the Italian governance and exploited in a political way. So I expect a real reduction in the privacy, but no awareness by people, and with no practical result in terms of terrorism, because it's not necessary.
Thank you. Rastislav, would you like to comment it also?
Yes, okay, thank you. So maybe some impressions from Slovakia. I was hearing very carefully. So when we are speaking about Vienna and about, let's say, some the things what was discussed about the cooperation, the Austria and Slovakia. But now here's some problems of Slovakia. As we can see about this close terrorist attack in Vienna, I should put one impression. Today is the problem of the security, the national level and the international level are much more close than before. And this is also important for the cooperation, not only from the intelligence and counterintelligence, but also for a prevention unit. In Slovakia was created a special unit, special part of Ministry of International Affairs and European Task. What is the key focus is to fight not only to the terrorism and cyber terrorism, but also against the hybrid warfare. What is the important? The hybrid threats and also the propaganda, the fake news, the impact from the, let's say, the influence of and the threats is much more important also for the national security level cooperation. So this is also the priority of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, more than before, to fight against the fake news propaganda especially. And what is this including? The process of using the fake news and these facts and the propaganda is connected with the process of radicalization. Today we have a lot of problems that some contemporary members from the radicals have a seat in a parliament today in Slovakia. So this is the important, how should we share our knowledge, our experience with our neighbors, close neighbors, because we see what? the threats are very close to our borders. So thank you. Only some small comment from my side. Thank you.
Thank you, Rastislav. Until we are waiting for Professor Dimitrov to join us, we have another question. This is for Dr. Dragicic, but I would like to also, in the context of what Professor Jovanka told us in her paper, that also she connects to that question, and I will explain at the end why. In considering the roots of terrorism, is there anything that can be done to prevent or reduce the fostering of terrorism in the internally displaced persons, refugees, and prison camps? Why I'm asking that? Because there are lots of problems that cities and places that are on the migrants' route, and Joanka, I think that you mentioned it also in your paper, represents a significant security threat to a local domestic population, not just because of the prejudices and also because of the real thing. So, Dragicic, would you like to answer the first one, and then Joanka took the floor, second one? Thank you.
Yes, I fully agree that displaced persons are very weak on the terrorist radicalization, and especially in prisons. Prison population are very vulnerable on this, and we have a situation here in Serbia, especially in Sanjak region, that some very young people from Sanjak, young Muslims, they went to the Vienna, especially in Austria, as a construction workers, and they committed some crime there. It's nothing serious, and they sentenced for a few months in the prison. After those few months, they become very radical Islamists, because in the prisons, we know very well, as Darko mentioned this, especially in Germany, in Austria, and Sweden, and the other European countries, they noticed that some radical imams or some people who are in the prison, they widespread this kind of radical Islamism. We know that prisoner population are very weak. They have some special psychological status, and people can manipulate them very easy. Displaced person, refugees, we on 2015 we have a big flood of refugees through the Balkan, so-called Balkan route, and those people are very vulnerable, and we don't know how many of them comes still radicalized from the North Africa, Middle East, Syria, Iraq, and we have especially one is the prison. I think that Rasta mentioned that the prison administration has to take care about those persons and to find some measures. This is security measures, how to divide those people in different rooms and how to oversight their contacts. This population are very, very vulnerable. Displaced person, especially, we know in this moment we have a lot of refugees in the European countries. They are for sure targets of radical Islamic groups, and they are play on them. Prison is much easier to control. This population is under control through Serbia. I don't know how many, a few 100,000 of refugees passed through Serbia from 2015 till now. I don't know, we have now maybe a few thousand people in refugee camps. In refugee camps, we can make control, our security services, we can make control, but why they'll travel to our territory, we have no any possibility to control them, except if we can use virtual intelligence, big data, but those big data has to be full of the member of terrorist organization when they appear on our borders to recognize them. These technology, face recognition, big data can be very useful, but these populations are definitely vulnerable on radicalization, and we have to take care about them. And on the first place, this is a job for our police forces and security services.
Jovanka?
Yes, thank you very much for that question. It is indeed very, very important, and in my opinion, the most important, most crucial thing about preventing terrorism is actually, working in the roots. Yes, so if we look at the people who are susceptible to the impact of the terrorist organizations or to the terrorist propaganda, or even to this kind of behaviors that might be triggered by their social situation. And of course, I agree with my predecessor that it is extremely important also for these vulnerable people who are coming to the cities from different countries, and they're also looking for help. Many of them are refugees. We need to work with them from the very beginning. Yes, so focusing on the social context is key, in my opinion. So basically, what we need is to have a good coordination of different services which are programmed to help this kind of people. Yes, so we need to have a good focus on educational programs, social programs, cultural programs, and also be able to help them in terms of accommodating to a different environment in many instances. I know it is not easy, it's much easier said than done, but on the other hand, if we kind of forget about this kind of problems and we just let those people be, it is extremely dangerous that they will become radical at certain point, especially after they will be disappointed, they will feel as they are left out of the society, and they might be even more susceptible to radicalization. So my opinion is that prevention is key, and also we need to have in mind what is actually the aim of this kind of terror attacks. Terror attacks actually are aiming at dividing society. So what terrorists do is actually to fear them, to make people feel insecurity, also to divide people, to divide the society, and also to radicalize different groups of society against each other. So in order to prevent that, we need to really work hard on trying to overcome this kind of borders, try to also engage these people, to invite them into society. So there is a lot of social work that needs to be done, and also a lot of effort that local authorities need to engage in terms of prevention of terrorism. Thank you.
So, Gordon, are you there? Jovanka finished with the questions. So, is there any more question from our colleagues? So, can we hear some other questions, or? So, before we get any kind of the new question, allowed me to say a few more words.
Darko.
Yes.
I was lost. My computer was lost connections for a brief.
I take the flag. So flag is yours.
Thank you. Sorry for that short delay. I would like to ask my good friend of mine, Ivan Demesmaker. He's the Secretary General of the European Corporate Security Association, and he's very, very well connected with the companies on the European level that works on the European level and that are also faced with these kind of threats and problems and challenges that we are talking up today. So, Ivan, would you like to be so kind to briefly comment what we heard today and what do you think from this economical and production perspective about these topics? And then I will give a floor to colleague William Tafoya and Tonči Prodan to give us a few comments about the things that they would like to do it. Ivan, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you, Gordon, and thank you for inviting me. Like we heard, the terrorism, of course, has an impact on the economy, which has an indirect impact on the corporations. But there's also a direct impact on corporations. If we think about the transportation, about critical infrastructure, they're all at risk. One of the things that we see is, and it was already mentioned this afternoon, is that terrorism is a global thing, an international thing. Now, corporations are also working on the international level. But unfortunately, police and justice are working on the local level. And when I speak about local level, I mean about the level of a country, which is completely logic, because it's there that you define the laws, it is there that you define your system. Now, we see good initiatives like Europol to do it on a broader level, with cooperation between different countries, but it's still a very local approach. If we look at our heads of security in large corporations, they are in charge of big regions like the Americas, like EMEA, Europe, Middle East, Africa, like America, like the Pacific. So the areas and the way we look at it is much broader. And I think that one of the solutions is also to look at what are the strengths of government organizations like police and intelligence, what are the strengths of corporate security organizations, and to really not be in a competition, but bring it together in a type of matrix form where you say, okay, this is what we are good at, this is what you are good at, let's work together, let's put our resources together, because, and that was already mentioned, it takes a network to beat a network. So I think that is a very important thing. And we unfortunately still see police and intelligence services saying, yes, we are the government, but that is private sector. So we do not want to work together. And I think that's an error, and we should put our strengths together. This is what I wanted to add. And what you are doing, and I would also like to congratulate you, Gordon, and also you, Darko, for putting this together, because this is really bringing a network together of the different countries and the different disciplines. So congratulations for that.
Thank you very much for your contribution. It's always interesting to hear something from you, because some of us, we don't have this kind of experience that you have. Here I saw in the chat room that... Yes, Darko.
Yeah, just one more thing. Of course, I have to say special thanks to Professor Jan Goldman, because actually we did this in this kind of the triangle from your side, Professor Goldman and myself. So we shall always remember that Professor Goldman was so supporting from the really beginning. So all, let's say, gratitudes also go to his direction as well.
Well, if I may add, Jan was a spiritus movens of this idea. But therefore, thank you, Jan. But I would like to ask Professor William Tafoya, because he wrote something very interesting in the chat room about the Millennium Project from the UN 2013 that it was written. William, would you like to, you offer us that you can give us a few brief info about it. Can you hear us? Can you hear me?
Yes, can you hear me?
Okay, yes, thank you. The floor is yours.
Thank you.
Have a few minutes.
Thank you. I'll try to stick very close to the time and be prepared to have the hook pulled out if I go over time. I'm very thankful to Professor Jan Goldman as well of the Citadel, who extended an invitation for me to take part in this very impressive collection of experts. My point was to say a few words. If some are not familiar with the Millennium Project, its first report was published. Its first report on terrorism was published in 2013 under the sponsorship of the United Nations Security Council. The uniqueness of that study, and some of you may have been participants, was a real-time online Delphi study. it was able to gather very quickly the opinions on a number of hypothetical situations, and then to boil those perspectives down to do projections. That's what the Delphi method was designed to do, and has been adapted by my colleague Ted Gordon, who lives in Connecticut, who's developed this idea of using real-time online Delphi study. One of the things that intrigued me, and that it was mentioned earlier, the issue of lone wolf terrorism. A specific study was done on that about 5 years ago. I don't remember exactly. And the conclusion was that there aren't any real lone wolf terrorists. It's a clever phrase, but that, as has been reported by many of you today, terrorists have to have some sort of organizational structure behind them to pull off a terrorist attack. And this was revealed in an episode. I believe that our colleague Shapiro could attest to this, that the Israelis discovered that lone wolf terrorists, somebody blowing themselves up in a courtyard, was actually somebody who had been drugged and who was standing there oblivious to what was going on, and remotely the device on this person's body was detonated. So it appeared it was a lone wolf, but it really wasn't. And there are a number of those kinds of incidents that were attested to in this study, the lone wolf terrorist study by the Millennium Project. But there are other ongoing studies. And for those who are not familiar with it, Dr. Goldman presented in the chat the website for the Millennium Project, where more information can be found. Also, Googling the topic Millennium Project. I think it's a very important piece of research that needs to be taken into account. Thank you very much.
Thank you, William, for your insight. It's always very, very interesting to know what if, for those who did not read it, the results of the previous researches and activities. Darko, did we have Professor Dimitrov here with us?
I am now looking forward to see, yes. Professor Dimitrov, are you with us?
I can't see him. In any way, I would like to return to the base topics of the idea, what is behind it, why we gathered here. And I would like to invite a friend of mine, Dr. Tonči Prodan, just to give us his insights about these topics. And also, please do not hesitate if someone has a question or comments on everything what has been said, or would like to say something, just give me a hint via this chat room, and then we will give you the word. Tonči, floor is yours.
Okay, Gordon, thank you very much. Good afternoon to you and to all respected colleagues. I would like to thank to all of them, to all the panelists for their very interesting presentations. Namely, I'd like to say a few sentences related to some of the root causes, or let's say triggers, of particular terrorist attacks in Austria and France. I think that it is of huge importance for us as anti-terrorist experts and academia representatives to talk about it. To be more specific, I would like to draw parallel with these terrorist attacks and actions or some of recent activities of French President Emmanuel Macron and the Turkish president as well, using the discursive analysis method. Chronologically, French President Macron gave the highest decoration or medal to a professor killed at school. This professor actually taught the students about the freedom of speech and showed caricatures of the Prophet Muhammad. In this way, you can provoke, especially radicals, because they perceive such an approach as a mockery of their religious feelings. Their conception of religion differs greatly from the others, especially from the Westerns, as you know. Now, President Macron has outlined a plan to fight separatism, focusing in particular on Islam. Macron thus says in public harsh rhetoric that Islam is a religion that is facing great that Islam is a religion that is facing a great crisis everywhere in the world, and in that way it provokes hatred and emphasis on fundamentalism, and in this case gives extremists room for revenge and action, I would say. Of course, it is not disputed that the head of state promotes freedom and speech as a universal value, but one should not insult anyone else, in this case Islam, especially since about 5.5 million Muslim citizens lives in France for generations. We can draw a parallel with the recent public appearances of the Turkish president as well, who, due to the sharp rhetoric of the French president in public, calls for a boycott of French products. This provoked a series of protests, as we all seen, across the Muslim population around the world, in which French flags and photographs with the image of Macron were burned. Now, a spiral of violence is being created here. Someone emphasized the conflict, and everything started to spill over to social networks, where hate speech and intolerance are intensifying. And it is a way it reaches especially the younger population, which is then further radicalized. Finally, due to all mentioned today, we could expect further terrorist attacks on European soil, and that is why much more anti-terrorist measures to be done. First of all, counter-radicalization program through social media. Thank you very much, Doctor.
Thank you so much. I think now it's time to conclude our session. And above everything, I would like to thank all distinguished speakers, all those that participate, listen to our webinar, seminar. I would like to say again, special thanks to Professor Jan Goldman, to my colleague Dr. Gordon Akrap. And final, again, I would like to, for the end, give the floor to Professor Jan Goldman to say a few words for the end of this webinar. Professor Goldman, floor is yours. Professor Goldman? Do we have Professor Goldman?
Can you unmute? Jan, unmute. Yes.
There you go. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Well, let me just say it has been a complete honor and privilege to be working with my colleagues, Gunrad and Darko, to be able to put this on. But I think more importantly, I believe, at least here in the United States, we need to reach out more to Europeans, particularly in Central Europe and Eastern Europe, as well as Western Europe. And I am really proud to have said to be a part of this gathering, because the perspectives and knowledge that you bring really will only benefit all of us in this global war on terrorism. And so I want to thank everyone for participating and helping set this up and speaking and presenting. And I look forward to working with you all. And I look forward to possibly having more of these conferences in the future. And I thank you for this venue, particularly to my two colleagues for pulling this together and for allowing me to be a part of it. So thank you very much. And thank you to all of you scholars. And I learned so much during this time. So thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna. It's really it was my privilege to do it in really short notice that you and Darko started, and I join you to organize these colleagues. Because if you see, there is a 2 hours and quarter 2 hours and 50 minutes since we started, and still we have 55 participants. And we started with 77, and there was in one moment there was 84 of us. So it's really impressive, and I think we were very interesting. What we said is, I think that supports the basic idea that we stand behind it, that security is a really significant challenge to the society, and we need to try to develop it in special sciences, in special scientific field, in order to give and offer the answers for our societies and states that we can combat it on a preventive level. Because if we use the police, it means that we are too late. If somebody would like to have any comments, questions, and any other activities, and would like to remain in contact, you have all of us emails. Please do not hesitate to do it. And also, I wish you all the happy Christmas, happy New Year. Stay safe, stay healthy, and happy holidays also. And please, I think Jan and Darko, we have to discuss also with some of the other colleagues who would like to do it, in order that somewhere in mid-January or beginning of February, we initiate another meeting like this one, to exchange the opinions and to see what we have done and what was done. So thank you very much. Have a nice day. Please, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you to you all. Bye-bye.
Congratulations. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Hello, John.
Great. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Wiedersehen.
Thank you. It was a pleasure. Thank you.
Wiedersehen.
Кажи чао, Мицо. Син, кажи браво.